Okay, it says a shareholders group is lodging a protest against your company. The shareholders group claimed that the mean tenure for a chief executive officer was at least 8 years. A survey of 97 companies reported to the Wall Street Journal found a sample mean tenure of 6.2 and a standard deviation of 4.9. So this is a sample standard deviation and a sample mean. You don't know the population standard deviation, so we're not going to use a z-test. We're going to have to use a t-test. You want to formulate a hypothesis to challenge the validity of the claim made by the group at a significance of 0.01. So the group is claiming it's at least 8. We're saying it's less than 8, or we want to prove it's less than 8. So in our calculator, we're going to go to stat tests. We're going to do a t-test because we don't know sigma. So we're input stats. So our mu is going to be 8. Our x bar is 6.2. Our standard deviation is 4.9. And 97 companies were surveyed, so that's our n. And we're trying to show that it is less than. So it's a left tail test, and we're going to calculate. So I think the mistake here was that our t-test here is a negative value. We can get a negative t-test. So our test statistics actually going to be negative 0.63.618. Negative 3.618. That's our test statistic. And the p-value is 2.379 times 10 to the negative 4. So I'll write that out. 2.38, we'll say, times 10 to the negative 4. That's that scientific notation. So basically what that means is you take the decimal place, and we're going to move it 4 places to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have my p-value is going to be 0.000238. So very low. So in this particular case, the p-value is less than alpha. Okay. So then if the p is low, we're going to reject the null hypothesis. So p is low, we reject HO. So we will reject HO. So if we reject the null, that means there's sufficient evidence to show the alternative. So we always want to write our conclusion in terms of the alternative. So there is sufficient evidence to show. No, this says the sufficient evidence to warrant rejection of the claim that the population mean is less than 8. No. There is not sufficient. We know there is sufficient evidence. The sample data supports the claim that the population mean is less than 8. That seems good to me. It's the alternative. Okay, that's the first one. The second one you sent me, it says based on a sample of 460 people, 119 said they prefer Trident to Eclipse. So that's our point estimate. So we want a 90% confidence interval. Okay, so we're going to go to stat. Now we're going to do a t interval. I'm sorry. One second. Sorry about that. Since we're using a proportion, we're not going to use a t interval. This is a proportion we're talking about, so we're going to use a proportion interval. So when you go to your tests, you'll see if you scroll down, right, we're going to the intervals. Here we go. A 1 proportion z interval. Okay. So we'll hit enter on that. The number of things that we have success for, it's Trident to Eclipse, so that's going to be 119. Out of 460, we want a 90% confidence interval. So we're going to hit enter again. So we get 0.2251. So let's say 0.225 to 0.292. Okay. So this says, based on this, we either reject the null hypothesis or fail to reject the null hypothesis. So what we want to do here is to compare our confidence interval to the null. So the null is saying that the proportion is 0.3, and you can notice here that 0.3 is not even a part of our confidence interval. So since the null is not even a part of our 90% confidence interval, then we can assume that it's not accurate. So we are going to reject the null hypothesis.